Hello and welcome to the Overland Journal podcast. I'm your host, Scott Brady, and I'm here with my co-host, Matt Scott.
Hello.
And we have a very special guest today. Distinguished even, I would say.
It's a little bit much for me.
Let's not go too far.
No, we have Sinuhe Xavier with us today, and Sinuhe is a longtime friend, and he is also had a significant influence on our industry, visually as an artist, a very accomplished traveler as well, and some of the best adventures I've been on in my life have been with Sinuhe. So thanks for being with us today, man.
Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor, and it's great to be back in these offices after a little hiatus.
Yeah.
I got some things figured out.
we all got to do that, man. Yes, that is a necessary part of living, right? Is learning about ourselves so much, and that has definitely been my life for the last few years, too. So I would love to start off with the story of your life because
it's crazy.
I've heard some of it, and it also totally ties back into, I think, a lot of why you're so great at what you do and your experiences in your life. But kind of give us the start for how was Sinuhe made?
Well, I mean, I was born the illegitimate son of a Colombian drug lord. And my mom didn't want me to grow up in that life, so she ferried me off. I was hiding out in Mexico City for a while, ended up in Eastern Colombia for a while, and, really ended up in Montana to grow up.
Yeah.
And, my mom was just this person that had this very big concern about how her son grew up and knew that she didn't want me growing up in this world that was evolving in the early 70s.
Sure.
And so, she was always a traveler too and an adventurous person. So it was just instilled in me to go out and have fun.
Yeah, this is a great memory, but you and I were standing in the kitchen of our mutual friend Micho Escobar, and his dad is there, and this conversation comes up about your mom and you being from Colombia, and the pieces start to come together. And Micho's dad, which I so apologize, I'm forgetting his name right now.
Billy Escobar.
Billy, yeah. Billy's like, I think I know your mom. And they had actually met.
Yeah, so that was wild because, 2014, 40 years after they were hanging out, had gone to school together, were in the same social circles of Bogota, they'd known each other, gone their separate ways or whatever. And it was wild because his mother and my grandparents were friends at the country club. And it just
so
sitting
amazing.
there in that small world explosion.
Yeah, I could feel that when we were there in that kitchen of just this connection back with your family's past. I mean, and Billy is just like one of the coolest guys on the planet. This amazing architect in Colombia, and his son, of course, is one of our closest friends. And it was just so neat to see that all come together. Now, how do you feel that like Montana shaped you for the traveler you became and the creative you became?
Well, Montana, growing up in Montana was really special. I grew up in Bozeman, and it was being around the college town, but also at a time when, Alex Lowe lived down the street from me. Tom Youngst was my ski coach.
Wow.
Scott Schmidt was in and out. And it was this time of Gordon Wiltsey was there, a National Geographic photographer. It really opened my eyes to you could do whatever you wanted to do. There wasn't this go to college, get a job, die.
Yeah.
It was go have fun, go have adventures, do whatever you want to do, and everything else will fall into place. And it's not the easiest route, but it was the route that I chose.
Yeah.
And I was really lucky that it's worked out okay.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And if I remember, you started snowboarding as a snowboarder, and then things evolved from there.
Well, skiing.
Skiing.
I was a skier.
Skier.
So I was a...
That's probably an insult. I just
no.
like totally insulting.
I mean, no, I snowboard now.
Okay, got it.
I snowboard.
It's like, I think that's a problem.
Freaking out.
No.
So you've always had Toyotas, right now.
Exactly. I'm a Toyota guy. No, I started off skiing, and I was really lucky that, my mom found a way to get rid of my little brother and I on the weekends. She'd drop us off at 8:30 in the morning, and we'd go on our ski team, our Mighty Mites, or whatever it was, and we'd be gone until 5 o'clock that night because she was always late picking us up. And it was her way of getting rid of us for the weekend, and it was great. All winter long I was on the mountain and learned my independence there, and I really blossomed as a skier, as an athlete. And when I was probably my late teens, I was a pretty good racer, but my coach said I'd be an even better, it was Tom Youngst at the time, I'd be an even better free skier. And he introduced me to the ridge at Bridger Bowl, which is this section. At the time, it was, you go up there and you had to have an avalanche beacon and a shovel and a probe. And this was, the late 80s. There was nobody up there. And it was the best snow on the mountain. And at the time, they called it extreme skiing, and it opened my eyes to this whole new world, and it was incredible. It was absolutely incredible. And from that, I became sponsored by the North Face, and I met Conrad Anker, who was my team manager at the time, and he really pushed me from just being an extreme skier to being a ski mountaineer, which was going out and climbing mountains to ski. And there's many first descents in Montana, particularly some in Alaska. It was this new frontier of going out and doing things that no one else had ever done before. And that's always been important to me, whether it's because then that was my creative outlet, was seeing a route, even with binoculars, or we'd go out in little planes and fly these mountains in the fall or the spring and look at these lines. And that was my creative outlet, was going, oh, we could put that together and go ski that. And, as I got older, it became more and more dangerous. Had a lot of friends die. Alex Lowe, who was a mentor of mine, who taught me my rope work and a lot about mountaineering. He was killed in an avalanche in the Himalaya. Trevor Peterson from Canada, who was an extreme skier, very accomplished, was also killed. Doug Coombs, Montana Jackson guy, was killed in La Grave. And it just was this, I was at an age where mortality was becoming very aware of it. And I just backed off. And I took a nice cushy job with K2 Skis, who was my sponsor at the time, and got out of the sponsored skiing thing. And it was, it's when I started snowboarding, actually, back to that. So, funny. Yeah, and growing up in Montana, that was a little bit of a digression, but growing up in Montana, it's a very bootstrap place. You just, before I was sponsored by the North Face, I had duct tape all over my non-Gore-Tex kind of waterproof stuff. It was just, you did whatever you had to do. I mean, I remember a really good friend of mine, he'd ski in Carhartts, and it was, you just did it.
It worked.
Yeah, it worked. Yeah. It got a little heavy by the end of the day, but it worked.
Yeah, sure.
Amazing. And I think that carries through, and there's also, a little bit of the humbleness of letting your actions speak for what you do. You don't really talk about it. You just do it and let it, you become that guy that did that thing. And it was, it was really important to grow up that way and have that in my back pocket.
And then that started to open up the opportunity for some photography, right?
Well, being around photographers as I was as a professional skier, I was always exposed to it. And once you're a professional athlete, you become pretty unemployable. Like you can't have a job. Like when I worked for K2, I was the worst employee ever. I mean, I'm sure there's still people in that corporation that see my name come up and are like, oh God.
That guy, not that guy.
Winner of 95, never again.
Yeah.
I mean, because, like I was friends with all of the pros, whether they're snowboarders or skiers, like Glenn Blake, Adam Merriman, and I had this Volkswagen van that I had all full of skis and snowboards. And by the end of the winter, Glenn Blake had drawn on the side of it, and Adam Merriman I think had spray painted on it, and I returned it.
Was this the K2 van?
The K2 van. Yeah, it was the K2 van.
It had added flair.
It's extra added flair that I got into a lot of trouble for. So, but those were, I mean, it was fun but completely unemployable.
Yeah.
And I figured out pretty quickly that I could make money with photography. And again, back to my mom, she had always been a photographer as a hobby.
I didn't know that.
Always had a dark room in my house.
That's pretty cool.
And learning from her, and I always thought like, oh, kooky mom, like crazy hippie mom's into photography. Like, look at her and the chemicals, neat. But it was really a natural progression for me to grab a camera and start making money with it.
Wow.
Yeah. And I shot for Burton for snowboards and Trans World snowboarding and that whole thing. And that's why a lot of people think like, oh, you're a snowboarder, because my photography career was started with snowboarding.
But snowboarding was like kind of becoming a thing around that time.
Oh, well,
it was the new.
It was huge. Yeah. And I was really lucky. I was at a time in Vail, Colorado, where, Ninja Jay Isaacs and Adam Merriman and J2 and Stevie Alters and Joe Curtis, like it was the epicenter of snowboarding, and those were my pals.
Didn't you say you were living like on a landing of like the stairwell or something like that in a rental house? I mean, that's an amazing story too.
The thing about this landing of the stairwell was I took this place to live sight unseen on a chairlift in Utah. And my buddy, he goes, oh, I've got a place opening up in Vail. And at the time I was living in Boulder, Colorado, working, I had my van. I could get up to any resort I wanted to. I had, an expense account to buy lift tickets wherever I wanted. But I had a season pass at Vail because all my buddies were there. And he's like, Sinuhe, I got this spot, this loft opening up in Vail. It's right on the bus route. It's awesome. And yeah, totally. Loft. I actually asked him, I go, loft, does it mean it has, 3 rooms? Da, 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 da. He's like, yeah, 3 walls. He's like, yeah, it's got 3 walls. It overlooks the living room, but it's got 3 walls. Oh, yeah, no worries. I get there, and it's literally the wide spot in the stairs. Its footprint was a queen-size bed. And I had this van full of stuff that I'd moved in there with, and I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I figured it out. I ended up being there for like 2.5 years, 3 years probably. It was awesome.
I don't know, maybe that's a good lesson though. I mean, you don't necessarily always need a bunch of stuff, and it kept you outside and doing it.
It was great. Like I had really fun roommates, and it was a time of, being, I was getting my photography career going. I was working in a snowboard shop. I was waiting tables. I was, working construction in the summer, like whatever it took to keep the snowboard thing going.
Yeah. Back to the Montana growing up.
Exactly. Just doing it.
You were just doing it.
Yeah.
And it seems like you've never been really overly attached to things. It seems like you've recognized maybe from that landing in Vail that stuff really just encumbers you.
Well, I mean, stuff slows you down. No matter, and it goes back to, it's funny when I started making money, you can see it through my Instagram. Like you see my rig go from, I think it was my 5-speed Land Rover without a rack.
That was the first car I knew that you had. Yeah.
Yeah, the 5-speed.
Because I don't even think I had a driving license when I was watching you with that on like Expedition Exchange, and on Portal and everything.
The number of people who bought a Discovery 1 because of Sinuhe, including both of us.
Yeah. I'm actually pretty sure that I bought my first camera because of Sinuhe, and I didn't even know you at that point.
I love that. I love that. So the thing is that, like you can watch this evolution of no rack, no bumper, just this truck. Then it gets the rack, it gets the bumper, it gets the lights, it gets the high lift jack that I never used.
Right.
It's like
in the most
the highest place.
Spot.
Yeah, the worst spot.
Totally rusted.
Exactly.
Doesn't work.
It doesn't work. Like wouldn't work. Like those things are so stupid. And then there's my second Discovery, and it just like had everything. I bought it built that Mark Oliveris built, and it was beautiful and it was perfect.
That was the automatic one, right?
Yeah, and it had everything on it.
Yeah.
And then I got a motorcycle. And I realized I didn't need all this stuff.
Any of it.
Yeah, and I pared it down, and things were quicker. Packing was quicker. Traveling was quicker. When I got to camp, I was relaxing faster than anybody else. And that evolution goes to my D90. When I got the D90, it didn't have anything.
Yeah.
And I literally would go in there. It was one duffel bag with all my sleeping stuff, a box with my camping stuff, and I was done.
Yeah.
And it's, if I couldn't fit it in my motorcycle panniers, I didn't want to take it.
What bike did you have?
Well, I started off with that KTM.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that KTM
640
that I bought here, didn't I?
You did.
Yeah, I bought it here in Prescott.
Cool bikes. The worst bike to ride ever.
Cool, super cool bike. Like my hands were numb.
Yeah,
20 minutes.
It would be great as a paint shaker at Home Depot.
Well, paint shaker, child proofer. Definitely surprised I had a kid after owning that bike. And then I got the Triumph Tiger, which I also got.
I remember that one because we put all those parts on it over there.
Yeah, you helped me out with that. That's right. That was a pain.
That's when I learned the importance of anti-seize.
Right. Yeah. But then I ended up actually on that Colombia trip that we were talking about where we met Billy Escobar. I was speaking to Micho, and he's like, "Okay, what bike would you like to have?" And of course, Colombians, they're the hardest people in the world to deal with. I want an 800. That's what I'm used to riding. Show up to Bogota.
I remember that.
Do you remember? I mean, here's this GS Adventure. The biggest. It's the gull wing of adventure bikes.
You might as well have a gull wing sometimes.
You might as well. And we were out for 14 days.
We were.
10, 14 days.
Did it look like that gull wing for our listeners or viewers on YouTube?
The one we stuffed into the back of a DC-3.
Yeah.
It was the biggest bike I've ever ridden.
I remember that.
We were basically doing, close to 3,500 miles.
Oh, yeah.
From Bogota through the northern Andes out to Venezuela.
Yep.
And by the end of that trip, I was sold. I caught it on fire. I dropped
Caught it
on
fire?
Oh, yeah. It was stuffed.
Note to self, don't let Sinuhe borrow my motorcycles.
Well,
it wasn't even your fault. Yeah,
it wasn't my fault.
It was filled with grass and stuff. Yeah.
There was grass between the engine bar. Between the engine protector bar thing and the cylinder head. And I'm riding along, and Micho just starts waving his head just like this, and I'm like, what? And he points, and he starts throwing dirt on my bike to put out the fire.
That was so funny.
I
do remember you successfully jumping over a water canal too, and you didn't stick the landing, but you did jump it.
I got it over it. Yeah.
You totally did.
But that's the thing. I was sold on this idea of as long as you're moving on those big bikes, the BMW, the 1200, as long as you're moving, they're incredible. The scariest thing about those bikes is putting gas in them.
Yeah. No, that was incredible. The mud and stuff we went through on that trip. everything that we, and of course the only 800 that was with us ended up in the bottom of the river.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, that was a hell of a trip, no doubt. That was incredible. Yeah, that was incredible.
But yeah, it goes back. You know, there's an old Maasai saying that another mentor of mine told me, and he's like, "The less you know, the more you carry on your back."
Yeah,
and it's completely true. And this mentor of mine, Brett Crystal, he walked one time from Boulder, Utah to Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is about 350 miles, with nothing but a satchel, a buck knife, and a wool blanket. You know, and it was a test to see if he could do it, but he could do it because he knew how to find food, he knew how to find shelter, all those things. I'm never going to be that guy. Yeah. Not into it. I like my down sleeping bag at night, and I like my warm coffee in the morning.
Sure. There's necessities, right?
Yeah, there's necessities, but
at least you know what those necessities are.
Yeah, when you pare it down, you can go a lot faster.
Yeah. Now, for those that are listening, because of Sinuhe's time as a photographer, I think it would be interesting to talk about for a few minutes just some things you would recommend to those that are listening that want to begin to capture their adventures. Any just general advice that you can give? I mean, we're not going to ask you what camera you use, but it's more like, you know, what are some things that people can think about when they travel to take a better photograph?
Well, the thing I hear most about people that are getting into photography is that they regret not taking a photo. And that's what I tell everyone. Even, you know, when I'm on a trip, you know, like, "Oh, Sinuhe, it's great that you're here. You're taking all the photos." I'm like, take your photos. You've probably heard it from me.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, take your photos, because I'm on one perspective, you know, and my perspective is my trip. And I hear it all the time, even on those trips where I say, make sure you take your own photos. We get to the end of it and they say, "Oh, I wish I would have taken more photos." And it goes for me too. You know, even on my trip today from Los Angeles on my way back home to Colorado, there's some beautiful light with the saguaros, but I was trying to make it here, and there's a couple photos that I regret not taking today.
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
But you can't. You know, there's that balance where you still have to get things done, but never regret not taking a photo.
Yeah,
there's a couple of double negatives, but it's always a bummer when you get done with a trip of any, you know, whether it's a family trip to Sayulita or it's a huge adventure across Africa. Megapixels are not going to expire. You know, you're not going to run out of them. Shoot. Like, just shoot those photos and edit when you get home. The other thing, you know, is I always say, like, don't be afraid to be that guy that starts wide and moves in tight, because when you're home and you're editing, you're able to, you know, decide which photo's the best, which tells your story the best, you know, and get back to the old-fashioned thing of the slideshow when you get home. You know, like, invite your friends over and show them what they did. Don't just get lost in this digital world of sharing it on Instagram.
I like that one, because I have like so many photos of so many adventures that are just on a hard drive somewhere, and
and you
like, who, what, why did I even do that?
Yeah, well, it's transcending this digital world that we've landed in, where, oh, I put it on Instagram and I got my likes, so I'm done. It's like, no, like, invite your best friends over, have a dinner party, and, you know, throw it up on the screen and have them do it for you when they get back from their trip, even if it's their kids' trip to freaking Scottsdale. You know, like, it's a good way to share things, and then you get more of a story than some, you know, 200-word caption.
Oh, that's really good advice. And you know, it makes me think about when I first started seeing your photographs. This was about the time we were starting Overland Journal, and I remember seeing some of your images, I think on Expedition Exchange, if I'm not mistaken. But I remember seeing those photos and thinking, this is exactly what I want Overland Journal to look like. Because you had this ability to introduce a vehicle to a scene but retain all of the wildness of the place. And I think that that's something that people oftentimes neglect, is that they get so focused on the model, which is the truck, that they forget to make it a part of its environment. And that's one of the things that I think you do so well.
Yeah. I've always thought your photos actually had a scene. I mean,
Yeah.
so many images that I see today, let's use Instagram for an example. If I see another 3/4 shot of a 4Runner, my head is going to explode. Like,
You're going to send them pictures of your dog.
I'm going to send him pictures of my dog. But like, what's the context? What actually was the trip? What did you do? Where were you? Like, you can't tell, I think, most days. And that's one of the things I've always appreciated about your photos, is they have emotion to them. They have a place. They have a purpose. I don't know. I've always liked that. But
It's not about the truck.
Yeah.
I mean, people hate hearing that because they put so much of their own identity into this truck that they've spent so much money on, so much time building. But the reality is, the truck's a backpack. The truck's a carabiner. It's a tool to get us to a place to do things that we love.
Yeah.
And whether that is, for some people, it's sitting around a campfire and telling tall tales. For other people, it's going canyoneering or going rock climbing or, whatever it is, peak bagging. But the tool's just a truck. It's like you can go out and do that in any manner of ways. And it's just like the truck, it can be any truck you want. It can be a 20-year-old Tacoma.
Yeah.
You don't have to sleep in it. You don't have to have some fancy fridge that slides out. If you're in this place that you love and you're psyched about it, like, you should be psyched. It's not about the truck. It's never been about the truck for me, even though I fell into that trap of all the gear and building it up and doing it. It's always been about how far away I can get from people.
Yeah.
It's not that I don't like people. It's just I like them a whole lot more when they're not around. It's like, so how far away can I get?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's where I want to be.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because when you drove up today, you're in a totally stock Range Rover Mark III, and you take it off road all the time.
Well, yeah,
You just don't need anything else. It works exactly for how you want.
totally. There's not a single drawer. There's not a fridge in there.
Yeah.
It's like, there's not a rack.
And on that bombshell,
No Max Tracks.
hey, now.
No, I mean, like, you just, like, it's all about, like, whatever that whole thing, back to your thing about these photos of these trucks that are totally built with a whole catalog on them.
yeah,
It's like, I want everything in the Front Runner catalog. Nothing wrong with Front Runner. You guys are all right. But it's the wrong way to go about doing things.
Yeah.
Start from, what do I love to do out there? Is it climbing? Is it mountain biking? Is it sitting around the campfire? Is it, maybe you're, my buddy Steve Garrow out of Flagstaff, he had a horrible accident. He can barely walk, but he goes out and he likes to just be in a place, sit around the campfire and take star pictures and, ride his little push bike. It's like, whatever it is, like, go backwards and build your truck to the things you enjoy doing.
Yeah, I think a lot about the vehicles that I've built and the amount of money and time that I can never get back.
Yeah.
Putting stuff on it that I didn't need. And right now, I mean, the Defender out back, I mean, it's got a winch on it. That's literally the only thing it has on it.
Totally.
And you just don't need much more than that.
No.
Not if it doesn't mean don't ever do anything to your vehicle, because there are, I mean, when we crossed the glaciers in Iceland, we needed the vehicles to be a certain way, but for most places it isn't the priority. To your point, let's make the priority about the experience. If we happen to have extra time and extra money, maybe make the truck look a little cooler, but
to me, it's like all that stuff on it, it goes back to like all this gear. It's too much these days.
Yeah.
Where all this stuff
it weighs you down, right?
It slows you down.
Yeah.
So back to the thing, it's like my photographs have always been about the the experience, where you are, what you're doing, the Columbia thing, like stuffing those GSs into a DC-3, putting them on a little canoe to cross the Meta River.
Yeah.
It's about that experience. And I really hope that people will start getting themselves into these situations where they're pushing their comfort zone.
Yeah.
Where they're not following a GPS track. I mean, to this day, I don't use a GPS.
Never have.
Never have.
I love paper maps though. Like, to me, I think a large part of the experience of traveling, by vehicle or just traveling is getting away and looking at my phone and looking at the little screen. Like that's not what that is to me.
No, not at all.
And I don't think you get better at navigation if you don't just eschew those kind of electronic aids. Like, I'm not saying that I don't have them. I'm not saying that I don't have Gaia on my phone and I don't plan trips and to know where I'm going, but then I know where I'm going and I like to actually, okay, cool. Well, I know in maybe like 10 miles I need to make a right. And let's see where that goes. I mean, sometimes that doesn't always work out, but
that's
it's
part
fun.
of that's adventure. It's like adventure. I think the definition is, an undertaking with an unknown outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the fun of it.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things you kind of said is like, why are you doing this? To paraphrase, like, are you going hiking? Are you going this? Whatever you're doing. I think there are a lot of people that just go out and drive. Like, that's all they do. Like, like looking at some of my friends, and I'm trying to think like, man, what do a lot of my friends actually do in this new thing, this new version of overlanding? And the only thing that I can think of is content creation, because that's all they talk about. Is they're talking about the gram. They're talking about getting the photo of the truck. And it's like, is it that dopamine or that serotonin hit of the 12 squillion likes or something? Like what are you actually doing other than just sitting in your car for 12 hours a day? I don't know. That's just maybe something that was a little bit enlightening for me.
But okay, so it's funny that you say the dopamine. And I think that there's something to be said about that dopamine of your likes on Instagram or whatever. But there's also something to be said about that dopamine, because there's nothing wrong with driving to get to that spot. And then the dopamine that you get with the sun rising or the sun setting or getting through that technical spot, and you get out to this spot that, you haven't seen a photo of, that the trail's grown over. And you're like,
I'm weird because like sometimes lately I found myself like as I move maybe a little bit further away from, being my primary career being in media. I love to put my camera down. I love to actually like, oh, here's that sunset. Okay. I know when the light's going to be right. I know when I need to take that photo. So I'm going to spend the other 15 minutes and just like enjoy the sunset.
Oh, totally.
I don't know. I like that.
No. Yeah. I mean, I think that that's a super important part of being, and especially being a photographer, is knowing when to take something in for yourself and when to take something that you're going to share with other people.
Yeah.
Because to me, that's an important part of being a photographer is you're taking something that you're going to share with other people to hopefully inspire to get outside, take care of the environment a little bit, that sort of aspect of photography. The world's a wonderful place, and we need to get out and do some things.
Yeah, that's interesting. It makes me think about that idea of when you're taking a photograph, you don't get to experience it yourself. And maybe that balance you're talking about is what actually makes you a better photographer, or helps. The balance of putting the camera down for 5 seconds and just taking it in.
Putting the camera down for 5 seconds, also using something that you've never used before. So, we're all used to using, our digital cameras these days. So sometimes it's like, oh, I'm going to shoot this with, I have a Leica M2. It doesn't.
We can talk Leicas all day, boy.
I don't know much about
I always think they're photographers' Viagra. It's like when you can't get your kicks off with the 5D or the Nikon this or that, it's just a different way of looking at it, looking through that rangefinder and being able to see outside of the lens.
Totally.
It's different.
Outside of the lens.
I love it.
And then having to be, manual, taking a light reading,
Yeah, 'cause the M2 is like total. It doesn't even have a light meter, does it?
It has no light meter. Yeah, it's fully. I mean, the thing was like in World War II, probably.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like
On the
thing's
wrong
old.
side.
Yeah, I have no idea. Like
Yeah.
the thing's so old. It doesn't have anything. But using something that you don't normally use, it also triggers that. Oh, I have to slow down. I have to figure these things out, and brings you into the moment.
Yeah.
Whereas when when I have my Sony, it's like bam bam. I know my settings. I see what the image is going to be like when I put it on the computer screen back at home. But with the Leica, it's like, oh, okay. And then I get that film back, and I'm psyched.
Yeah. What are you going to
Super
see?
psyched.
What are you going to
exactly.
see? Yeah. One of my favorite photos that you've taken is I don't know what you took the photo with, but you were looking down on the like a 4x4 or a 2 1/4 Mamiya or a Hasselblad or something, and it was the photo of the LR4 looking down, and you can see the scorched earth and kind of the cracked planet and the tripod, and totally captures that.
Yeah, that was a Mamiya 535C, I believe. And we were out there shooting the LR4 for you.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, that was a time, that was a crazy day, actually. Let me tell you about that day. That was the day I found out that I was going to have my son, Cooper.
Oh, wow. So that photo's even more important.
I mean, I remember that day like so crystal clear because, my ex-wife, Stephanie, came down and she's like, hey, I've got some news. And I'm like, okay, what? And she's like, we're going to have a baby. And I was like, is that good news, bad news? Where are we with this?
Yeah.
But I still had to go shoot that car.
Wow.
So we drove out to El Mirage and shot it.
Oh, man.
I brought all the gear out because I wasn't sure how we wanted to shoot it, but it was really one of those things where I wanted to do something different.
Yeah.
So we did it with the Mamiya.
Yeah, that was such a cool photograph, looking down on that camera and seeing the vehicle in the viewfinder. I guess it is a viewfinder.
Yep.
Yeah, that was so cool. That's amazing. What do you got, Matt, for?
I don't know. I got a lot of things. I was going to talk about Leicas, but
we can talk about. I don't know much about Leicas. I've got two. They're neat.
I don't know. I mean, how much does the gear matter? Can I also have a beer? Is that something that we can ask for?
We asked for beer.
I mean, if the guest asks
beer.
first.
Beer's cool.
Oh, we got to make sure we talk about the Traverse, though. That's a key.
Yeah, Traverse.
Key piece of this.
I mean, because Utah Traverse, if you guys have heard of it, I mean, that's you. That's your thing.
Sinuhe's thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Utah Traverse. I mean, and I guess we go back to what we were talking about before we got into the cameras is, for me, a big thing. Oh, beers.
This is a little luxury. You made it big when a production person brings you. Ryan, you're just a production person now. Us big on.
I'd like to point out that it's snowing out.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. It's nice and cozy in here.
It is March in Arizona.
Yeah.
March.
Anything can happen.
Exactly.
Anything can happen.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. I just think it's so cool that we're doing this. I mean, without getting gushy, Sinuhe, I've looked up to your work and you, I think, for like more than half of my life, and it's cool. It's just interesting for me, like
because you were 15 or whatever.
I joined Expedition Portal when I was 15 years old.
Hello, it's AARP. Is Sinuhe there?
Oh,
I'm the oldest in this room
by months.
by a couple months.
I am the youngest.
You can take that.
I'm the youngest in this room.
There you go.
I'll take that. But no, I mean, it's just cool. I mean, I think in the same way that, you were talking about, you realized you could do whatever you wanted. And I think there's just maybe a personality mindset of that, that explorer gene or whatever that is. It's just like, if you want something, just go get it. You can find a way to do it. And I don't know, a little bit of it's coming full circle to me, just, sitting around with like two guys that I've looked up to. And
thank you. I appreciate that. And it's not easy, making that decision that you're going to not follow the the path of the typical,
Yeah.
Get a job, go to work 9 to 5 and work for somebody else and make money for somebody else.
Yeah.
Like, that's the easy route. But it's also
Not that people don't work hard at that.
No.
Right.
It's not for me. I mean, it works for a lot of people.
I was a terrible employee.
I am a terrible employee. You can ask Scott. When I worked for Scott, I was a terrible employee.
Yeah. So was I. Cheers.
There we
But
go.
it wasn't terrible. I was just
Neither of you were terrible.
I was
Not even-
21 and usually hungover.
No, it's
I don't regret
it's a tough route to choose, but you learn your for me it's always been the little wins.
Yeah.
Keep the momentum going, and you get those little wins that get you to the big wins, and and then you get back to the little wins, and you just got to keep those little wins going, and it depends on what it is. Sometimes it was always great working with Overland Journal because to me those were always little wins, getting a cover and getting a story published and going on these adventures. It was it was this great thing that kept me alive when I was stuck in advertising, sitting in some boardroom trying to sell a big car company on why we had to go to Chile to shoot their car because
you've been like all over for these commercials.
I've been super lucky that way.
Yeah.
Super lucky that way.
Yeah, and I'm not convinced that a life of convention is any safer or more predictable, actually, because you always hear of the person they worked for the job for 40 years and they retire and they fall over a couple months later, or the company shuts down and all the business moves to another country. And I don't think that the life of adventure or of kind of eschewing convention, even in your professional life, I think you actually maybe have a better outcome in some ways because you're better tuned
You're
to
in
deal
control.
Yeah, and you're better tuned to deal with irregularities and things that come up, and you have more skills in the toolbox, I think, a lot of times.
I mean, I know like when I went out on my own, it was terrifying to be like in your early 20s and you're trying to figure something out. I like moved to Australia with like $4.50 to my name to work for a magazine, and I don't know. Now the way I think of it is it actually terrifies me to not have my future in my own control. Like, working for some big company and you're about to retire and, oh yeah, well, your benefits vest tomorrow, so we're going to fire you today or whatever it is, or the accountant's embezzling the money and you're screwed and you're just out of a job.
Ask the Enron employees or whatever.
Yeah, like I don't know. I mean, I think
it's like these people that go on guided overland trips.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest thing. I was out in the Arizona Strip and I saw this dust trail, like a dust trail I've never seen before.
Like the Baja 1000's coming.
It was like the Baja 1000 was coming.
Right.
60 trucks.
Wow.
All kitted. I mean, kitted. Like
Ready to go around the world.
Ready to go around the world. And
I don't know how that's enjoyable. Like the outdoors is like such a personal thing for me.
Yeah, it was the most bizarre thing. And I was at this junction by the schoolhouse.
Okay, sure.
What's the Mount Trumbull?
Yep.
Yeah, Trumbull Schoolhouse. So I was at this junction and I just kind of waited for them to come because I wanted to see what this was all about. And they show up and it was a guided tour. And they were going to that ranch that was down towards the Grand Canyon.
Phantom?
Not the Phantom. That's
the one you hike to.
Yeah, it was like Bar 10 Ranch.
Bar 10, yeah.
Yeah. All 60 of these trucks were going to the Bar 10. Right? And I'm like, really? What are you guys doing? They go, oh, and there were people from Florida that drove all the way from Florida, from Washington, from Oklahoma, from Chicago. And I was just like, what are you guys doing? And they're telling me, well, we're on this guided thing. We're going to go drive down to the Bar 10. Then we drive to the north rim of the Grand Canyon. Then we drive to the south rim. And I'm like, what is this?
It's all in Google.
Yeah, like why are you why are you paying somebody to suck someone else's dust?
Yeah.
And like, there's no adventure.
Let me play
in that.
devil's advocate here. Is we've all been doing this for a long time. You guys more than me. That first time you go off road, like I still have, I'm one of those dudes from Chicago, and I remember like
Nothing wrong with Chicago. I like the Windy City.
yeah, it's all right. Go Cubbies. But for somebody a young person that was from Chicago, I remember like going to Mexican Hat in Utah my first time. The first time I drove to the West Coast is when I was moving here to, start at OJ, and that was scary. It was just something that I had never experienced before, and where I don't have a problem with those trips is if those people take that experience and they realize this sucks. This actually isn't that terrifying. And then they go out on their own. I think one of the problems I'm seeing in the industry is it's all about group runs. It's group this. It's all of these like massive amounts of people going. And, you have to move away from that stuff, I feel. But that's just my opinion, man.
The trails can't take that kind of abuse. I mean, it needs to be small groups. Otherwise, I mean, imagine, I can't even think about what 60 trucks would do to a campsite.
Yeah.
It's now a giant campsite, I guess.
Well, I think that they were staying at the Bar 10 on their property.
Got it.
That's good.
And then when they were going to the North
gotcha.
Rim, they were probably staying in some,
Gotcha.
like, I can't, 60 trucks wouldn't fit Point Sublime.
Yeah, that's right.
But that's
goodness.
another point is, like this whole group thing. I think Jack Quinlan, who is a mentor of mine within the overlanding world, it's, he has a really strict rule of no less than 3, no more than 5.
Yeah, he's right.
And I think impact to campsites, like you were mentioning, that's super important.
Yeah.
Because you see these groups of 15, 20 trucks, and they show up somewhere, and everybody want to be together, but they want to be apart.
Yeah.
So it just spreads.
Yep.
And, this sagebrush won't mind too bad if I drive over it, or these bushes won't mind too bad. And oops.
That wasn't me.
That was me.
Oh. Well, I mean,
no one's gonna mind if I do it, blah, 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 blah. But then the next time you go, oh, someone drove there, I'm gonna drive there.
But I think we've all seen it. I think, I think like the UTV guys catch a lot of flack, but I wonder, they maybe catch more flack for the condition of trails, but it's not going to be long before overlanders start catching flack for condition of campsites, off-trail use. I know, like, we spent some time in Colorado this summer in the San Juans. Like, I used to live in Ridgeway. I know the San Juans like the back of my hand. And I'm going to places, and there's like, here comes like a Crown Vic coming up. I forgot where I was, but there's, I don't know.
There's a lot of use right now.
There's a lot of use. And I've said it before, like, somebody from the Forest Service, please contact us or something, because there needs to be more management for overlanders. Like right now, I don't think anybody knows where to kind of put these people. Are they RVers? Are they recreational four-wheel drivers? Like what are they? How do we treat them? And it's going to become an issue. I mean, this industry is doubling every year, and we're just seeing more and more vehicles. We're going to have the Bronco come out. We're going to have, we just had the Defender come out. We're having these like purpose-built vehicles, and you're getting people that, in the same way that maybe UTVs, and I'm not picking on UTVs, but it brought a lot of new blood into off-roading. Well, we're having the same thing happen, except now it's with 7,000-pound vehicles, and we're actually destroying habitat. We're destroying parts of the environment, and I think that's something that we all have to be a little bit sensitive to.
Well, of course.
Like you won't tell anybody, from what I remember, like where the photo was taken. Like, isn't your rule like I'll show you, but I'll never tell you?
Pretty strict rule of mine.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not very many exceptions to that rule at all.
Unless maybe it's a well-known location.
Yeah, if it's a well-known location.
Yeah, like I just did like a week-long trip in the Earth Roamer, and I don't even want to say where it is because it was so wonderful. I didn't see a single rooftop tent for a week straight. and it was beautiful and pristine, and you could drive for hours and not see a structure. And unfortunately, now where I'm at is I'm like, I don't want to talk about it, because like all of these places, I'm not saying that we're influencing this, or I don't want to be that conceited, but once these places kind of get out there, it's that Instagram Me Too culture. It's like how, what's the bend in Arizona?
Horseshoe Bend.
Horseshoe Bend.
Yeah.
Like the first time I went there, like
it was a dirt parking lot just a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And now you have to pay to get into it.
And there's like, at the last time I went, I took a friend from Chicago that I went to school with. There's a parking lot filled with tour buses. You know, like at what point, and maybe this is a different discussion, but like, you know, at what point can you just stop talking about those places?
Well, it's a tricky thing, because we're in the business of inspiring people to get out.
Yeah.
You know. However, with that comes the responsibility of teaching them how to do it in a style that doesn't hurt the environment, doesn't, you know, you're not geotagging, you know, there's a little bit of, you know, in mountaineering where I come from, there's different styles, right? There's the alpine style, Reinhold Messner, who goes without oxygen, his backpack, maybe he has a Sherpa. He's like, the guy's insane.
Right.
And then there's the full on hiring the guides with the 20 Sherpas.
Wall Street mountaineering.
The Wall Street mountaineering. You know, there's nothing wrong with how you climb a mountain. Everyone's going to climb that mountain. So how do we take that mountaineering kind of perspective and bring it to overlanding, where I think myself, the way I do it, I'm on the very alpine side. I'm very minimalist. I don't hardly ever set up a tent, even, let alone a rooftop tent. When I'm with my kid, I'm in a Sprinter van maybe, but I'm super minimalist. I'm alpine style. And then you go to the other side where it's, you know, you've got the rooftop tent, you've got the porta potty tent, you've got the changing tent, you've got the spare room.
And those things all get thrown out into places that are like habitat for things and shouldn't, you know, that's not the campsite.
Sure. It always does. How do we as an industry educate those coming into it that there's a proper style and a not so proper style?
Yeah.
And I hate to say wrong.
Usually it just comes from not knowing. Well, those are all really important points. And I think you're right, Sinuhe. It does come back to gaining understanding, helping to educate your fellow travelers. As travelers, that we take the time to learn about the sensitivities of a place like cryptobiotic soil in Moab, like learn about those things, so that way, if we don't take responsibility for ourselves as an industry and as travelers, then the government's going to do it for us, and they never do it anywhere near.
We don't want that.
Anywhere near as elegant. So, but along those lines, that's kind of the spirit also of your Utah Traverse. This is kind of the way you go, but you can pick your other routes if you want.
Well, the Utah Traverse, you know.
Sorry.
Jeez. Leave it to the ginger.
That is the first time I've done that on the podcast.
You realize that everyone that has been on the podcast says you're a ginger?
Really? I mean, like my beard's kind of ginger.
There's nothing wrong with being a ginger.
Picked on.
You know, Prince Harry got kicked out of the monarchy, not because his child could have been, you know, but because he was a ginger.
Well, consider me royalty then.
The Utah Traverse really got started when I was traveling from Vail, Colorado to Los Angeles. And I was in the transition from snowboard photography into commercial work. not that snowboard photography wasn't commercial work, but it was kind of a joke. And the I-70 to I-15 shuffle is really, it's a great, easy way to go. But I started breaking it up, and I was really fortunate. I was really fortunate with Steve Casimiro to drop in on a National Geographic job in Boulder, Utah, back in '99 or 2000, and our assignment was Wild Roads.
Wow.
It was basically like, go shoot photos of the roads surrounding, this new national monument that we have, the Grand Staircase Escalante. And I think we drove 3,000 miles in 10 days.
Wow.
We were based out of Boulder. And so when I started this commute, I started kind of dipping down, and I was always camping and trying to find the different campsites. And I'd mark it on this Google map. And as I started looking, the dots had this route.
Yeah.
And as I got more and more into, canyoneering was my thing in the 2005, 2006, it turned into, there's this canyon here, there's this canyon there. But then this route just kind of zigzagged, and it hit all these high points of the Grand Staircase, of Canyonlands, of the Moab area, all the way over to the Uncompahgre Plateau to Telluride. And I think, it was probably 2010, 2011 when you and I, Scott, we started talking about the Utah Traverse. It was this little idea of,
great idea.
What this route could be, because it basically goes from Mesquite, Nevada, all the way to Telluride with 900 miles total and 90 miles that's pavement.
And even the pavement is magic.
The pavement's super magic.
Super good.
Super good. There's not a bad way. Everything south of I-70 and east of I-15 is magic. It's
I mean, that part of the world has to be one of the most beautiful and varied parts of the world. I mean, we've all had the pleasure of seeing a lot of the world. I don't know. I always go back to Utah. Like if somebody was put me on the spot, what's the most beautiful place in the world?
Yeah,
Utah always comes to mind.
Certainly in my top 3.
Yeah, for sure.
So what is your kind of your vision for that? And tell those that are listening how they can find out more information about the Utah Traverse. What are some of your goals around that you'd like to share? And how can people find out more information about what you're doing with that project and maybe what your future plans are around it?
So ultimately, I mean, in a wish come true type of situation, it would be, a national scenic byway.
Yeah.
That they designate, here are these points. And that's the key, is it's not a route. It's not this line that you can
It's not
follow.
a GPX file.
It's not. It's these different points that you want to get to. The Mount Trumbull Schoolhouse is one. Powell Point is another.
Yeah.
Bull Run Gorge is another. But it's how you get to those points, the in-between spaces, that's up to you.
Yeah.
And it's choose your own adventure.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need gas. Sometimes you need food. Sometimes you need a shower. And that's okay. There's no right or wrong way to do it. But if you want to have the true experience of the Utah Traverse, you hit these certain points. You spend the night and you watch the sunrise from Powell Point, because that being the highest point of the Grand Staircase Escalante is a spot you should see the sunrise from.
Yeah.
And that's all there is to it. And now that I'm living back in Vail, I want to take it all the way from Telluride and extend it through the Continental Divide all the way up to Wyoming. I did the route with Land Rover when we did the 25th anniversary of the Great Divide Tour. And that route that Tom Collins put together, it's magical. And
Yeah.
I'd like to put something similar together that connects, to where you could ride your motorcycle, drive your car, your truck from Steamboat all the way to Mesquite, Nevada, and have minimal pavement. But there again, there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just hit these points. Here's these highlights that you should hit.
It's
And
such
when
a
you
cool concept.
hit those highlights, you're going to have a great time.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I think you add, because there's other routes that are similar, but it seems to me that, like, if you look at the Trans-America Trail, for example, it had the one goal of just crossing as much of the country on dirt as possible. Whereas it seems like you had the time and the desire for it to be these very intense visual experiences that you'd have in these different locations. And that is very different. That's what I noticed when we rode the Utah Traverse on the BMWs. It is just gorgeous. Like, it's so stunning. That was the difference. It wasn't just about, let's stick to a dirt route or let's make it super challenging. It was just visually incredible.
Yeah.
Well, I think that comes from me being a photographer.
I think
visually oriented. And when people ask, because I get private messages, I get emails all the time. Like, can I get the route? Can I go from Telluride to Mesquite? I go, you could do it any way you want. This is the way I suggest doing it. I suggest doing it Mesquite to Telluride because I personally like sleeping in. The light when you're riding into camp is usually gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's not
You're backlit.
You're backlit. The sun's behind you. The sun's gorgeous. You're not riding into the sunset, driving into the sunset.
That's something I never would have thought of. Brilliant.
Brilliant.
It's like, so yeah, you can go from east to west, but the second half of your day is going to be
squinty.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. Yeah,
So,
and that we did a little article on that for Overland Journal a few years ago, and I think that the imagery turned out so great on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a kind of a basic thing. When you take a photo, in class 101, they're like, have the sun behind your back at 30 degrees.
Yeah.
And okay, that's going to be a pretty decent photo. So while you're driving or riding your motorcycle, here you are with this, 180 degree view that's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Through one of the most gorgeous, the Colorado Plateau. It gets no better.
Yeah. It's
have the light good.
Yeah. Pretty good, right?
Yeah, it's super good.
And so what's coming up for you? What are some trips that you've got on your horizon?
Well, COVID's kind of screwed some things up.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right now I'm hoping to get back down to Colombia with Elephant Expeditions and Micho. I'd love to get. He's expanded from motorcycles into. I think he has a fleet of Land Cruisers.
Yep.
Or something along those lines. Prados, maybe. So I'd really love to get down to Colombia again. I'm just itching to. A year ago at this time, I was in the Azores of Portugal, and I haven't been anywhere.
Yeah.
I haven't been on a plane in over a year, and I'm just like itching to go somewhere.
Sure.
It's a huge lifestyle change, right?
It's insane. I mean, going from flying 200,000 miles a year to zero, it's wild.
It is wild.
It's super wild. But it's wild, but it's also made me appreciate the local stuff. And I've had to explore some things that I kind of have taken for granted for the last 5-6 years while I've had the luxury of going to Australia and Chile and Alaska and Europe multiple times a year. It's like, all right, back to the Utah Traverse. I've been doing that again. Like I've driven sections of it on these trips that I've been doing, back and forth. And it's great.
Yeah.
And a really interesting thing happened when I was out on the Arizona Strip last November. I ran into a ranger from Toroweep, and he grew up there.
Wow.
His grandfather was a logger up on Mount Trumbull. And we ran into each other, and he's the nicest guy, the nicest ranger, been a ranger there for 20 years. And it's like I'm coming back, making it macro again instead of being out in the world. It's a new appreciation for the Southwest, you know, where to me is that's my home.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like the right place to be.
Yeah, for sure.
How can people find out more about what you do? How can they follow you on the Instagram and your website? And how do people find out more about you and the work that you do?
Best place website is super boring because it's just commercial work, and you know it's stuff that big corporations paid me to do. So that's boring, you know. And those corporations are lame, boring. Instagram's kind of cool, but it's kind of curated, and curated lives are boring.
Yeah.
But both SinuheXavier.com, Sinuhe Xavier at Instagram.
And how do we spell Sinuhe?
You know, why you want to make fun of my hippie mom? Like,
I'm not making fun of it.
Life.
I know how to
save my life.
She created your life.
You can spell it Sinhue.
No, it's not HUE.
It's not?
You just blew it. You guys know me for 15 years and blew it.
It's not H.
No.
Sinuhe.
Sinuhe Xavier.
Sinuhe.
Sinuhe.
It's pronounced Sinuhe. I don't know where these white people are coming up with this stuff.
I grew up surrounded by corn. My name is Matt, and I have 3 first names. Sorry. Don't look at me like that.
What's your 3 first names?
Matthew James Scott. I think it sounds kind of presidential. I don't know. Maybe I should run.
Maybe. Maybe you could be the president of the Prescott Rotary Club. That'd be a good start.
So now that I've told you not how to spell his name, sorry.
And I think on kind of parting thoughts, what kind of advice would you give to someone just getting started in all of this? They would love photography. Maybe they took it in high school and they see the world in a different way, or they want to be a traveler or an overland. Like, what are some basic things, or what's your kind of the things that you've learned the hard way that you would want to share with somebody that's just starting to take the same journey that you did decades ago?
Get used to eating sardines, because sardines will keep you alive a can of sardines will keep you alive for 2 days.
Okay.
No. You know, the thing is if you want to be a photographer, shoot. Doesn't matter what you shoot on. If it's your iPhone, if it's your Samsung, it's your phone, like shoot. Like find your point of vision. Find where your point of view is in the stories you want to tell. Because everybody has a story to tell. Everybody experiences things in different ways. And telling that story is important, you know, and everybody's going to find, you know, there's an audience out there for your story. But that audience isn't going to be there if you don't tell it. So tell it. Start somewhere. For me, within the overland community, it was a stupid BBS on Expedition Exchange. I mean, it was ridiculous.
The plumber snorkel thread.
I mean, it was one of the
legendary.
Legendary. I mean, it was the most ridiculous thing
I made it.
planet.
I made it.
I'm sure you did.
Totally did.
You made it onto the snorkel. I'm sure I did too.
Deservedly. Everybody made it onto the
I think I made it
plumber
when I was
snorkel,
17. So.
Yeah. You know, and the thing is, it's like you just have to tell your story, and then it develops. And things don't happen overnight. Like you have to gain that experience. Go out there, shoot, learn from your mistakes. Don't be afraid to reach out to your mentor or who you want to be your mentor. I mean, everyone's accessible these days.
Yeah.
And if you're a dick, you don't answer.
Yeah.
I mean, I have people reach out to me all the time, and I'm like, hey, yeah, cool. Like, if I have time, I engage. If I don't, I say, I'm sorry, I'm super swamped right now, and I can't deal.
Yeah.
But, like, tell your story, shoot your photos, learn from your mistakes, and keep pushing it. And the main thing is don't get caught up in all the stuff.
Yeah.
Go out. If you've got a Toyota Tercel, go and you want to car camp, go car camping. Like, it doesn't matter. You don't need the winch and the roof rack and the max tracks.
And you're staying at my house tonight.
Just like go out, do it. Like,
Yeah.
have fun, sleep under the stars. And like, you don't even need the tent. You don't need the Gore-Tex.
Yeah. Or the expensive camera. You can get away
No.
with, you can take some really great photos with something simple too.
Exactly. Get artsy. Buy the disposable camera at the gas station.
Yeah. Sinuhe, thanks so much for taking the time today to get on the podcast with us. It has been such a pleasure for me to have had you in my life, and the places that we've been and the things that I've learned from you. Just really grateful for you. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much. And I'd like to take this opportunity to tell a little story about Scott Brady. Because this guy, I got dropped off on the wrong side of the Mexican border one time. And he could have crossed without me. And I was standing in this line all by myself. No clue how I was going to get to the other side. I mean, this line was huge. It was like a vaccine line today. And Scott Brady comes walking up after about 20 minutes and goes, I couldn't leave you here. And that, to this day, that's always stuck with me. Scott Brady's all right. I'll be on your podcast anytime.
Thanks. And now we got dinner, I think, to go.
Yeah, let's do it.
Right on. Thanks,
Thanks,
Sinuhe.
guys.
Appreciate it. And on that note, goodbye, everybody.